All right, let's do this. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another wonderful episode of the Uper Farmer Cigar Bonfire Talks. How's everyone doing tonight? I'm doing great. Sitting out here in front of a nice little fire, smoking a cigar, having a beer here soon. Life could not be more relaxed and, quite nice. I'm gonna get my chair from out of a hole. There we go. I'm going to turn on my light, my upper light here just for a second so I can show you the whole what we're smoking, what we're drinking tonight. But then I'm going to turn it off because this is kind of a, maybe focus more on the bonfire there. It's kind of a nice little fire going. All right, let's ruin this just for a second so we can show off tonight. Oh man, I'm able to focus in on this, huh? Well, you're going to take my word for it. It's the Warfighter 50 cal. Yeah, you can't even get that in a good light in there. Warfighter 50 cal. I've had it before. Nice cigar. Don't mind it at all. The bugs are swarming in. So real quick, the Forlong Oatmeal Stout from, what's a Michigan beer? Yeah, made in Michigan. Greenbush Brewing Company. All right, let's turn this off. Get some of that more nice ambiance light as I open up my Forlong beer. So tonight, kind of fitting, I am recording this actually on September 10th. My goal is to actually get this, oh my goodness, this beer is a heady beer, is to get this uploaded tomorrow. This is 2021. I think many of you probably know that by my uploading schedule. I may actually have to let this beer settle before I pour it. I don't know if I poured bad or what. But I'm going to do a I Remember. I remember 9/11. My story, what happened to me, how it affected me, where I was when it happened, all that stuff. So, once the beer settles here, I'll take a sip and tell you how it is. This is, I don't know if you can actually see that on camera, but it is almost all head. And I don't think I poured it poorly, but must have. Anyhow, back to the story. So, 2001, September. That was my senior year of high school. To say that I was not excited to get away from the small town I grew up in was an understatement. As I mentioned before, high school was an absolute nightmare for me. I have very few good memories of high school, and most of them don't involve high school itself, but extracurriculars, theater, friends I hung out with. People have asked, well, would you ever go back and do high school again? Never. Never, ever, ever, ever. That's an interesting oatmeal stout. So I was getting ready. It was my senior year. I was just starting. My parents had been divorced for quite a few years at that period, at that point. My sisters had all moved out. It was just me and my brother, living most of the time at home with my mom. I lived full-time with my mom. My brother didn't. Neither here nor there. I was ready to be out of the small podunk town. I was definitely willing to just be out of the town I grew up in. Well, I had for 2 summers previous worked in Maryland, just outside, about 20 minutes outside of Maryland. Took kids out camping, helped run a day camp. I was one of the counselors. Took kids out in the woods, all that fun stuff. So I was very familiar with the DC area. I used to spend my off weekends during the summer touring all the sites. Just get the big metro pass and the different passes you could buy and just spend as much time as I could enjoying the capital. So I was well versed in the different comings and goings. In my junior year, it was pressed upon me to pick a career. So I wasn't sure. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was actually looking at joining the military. But the town I grew up in, it was expected for you to join the first responders, either the medical corps or the fire department. Well, that summer, there was a fire course that started. But at the time, I was 17 and would just barely be turning 18 when the course finished. So I was denied entry. I was told to wait a year before getting my fire, but they had an EMT course that would be starting late August, early September, that they were willing to give me a waiver based on my age because I would be 18 by the time I was done with the course. The course, the EMT one, that one especially was longer. That's a story for another day. So I'd been in EMT class for a couple of weeks. I was finding my groove as an EMT. Hadn't decided yet that I wanted to pursue on to become a paramedic at that point. Still was leaning hard into going to military. Again, story for another time. So let's talk about the actual day. The actual day, I had one of the ultimate slacker schedules for senior year. I think the only real class I had was maybe an English course, maybe a history class. Most of them were just stuff like weightlifting. I had study halls. Was a TA. You name anything you could do to get out of actual real coursework, I was doing it. So my first class in the morning there was weightlifting. I did weightlifting early in the morning. I remember we were lifting. Again, I'm not a big time buff weightlifter, but gave me a good course to get in shape for what I figured was going to be the military, but also then allowed me to kind of not exactly, shall we say, work that hard my senior year. So as we're weightlifting, on the radio, there's an announcement, a news bulletin, that a plane had crashed into one of the Twin Towers. There wasn't much information they had, and even at that point, I do remember the newscaster saying the rumors they're having was it was mechanical error on the plane's part that caused it to crash. Okay, well, interesting. It didn't really affect me per se. And I don't know if the news broadcast ended or if it was time for me to go hit the showers to go to my next class. I do know we maybe changed the channel or music came on or I started lifting, didn't listen to the rest of the news update, but at that point it still looked like it might have just been an accident, a freak accident. Well, by the time I got to my next class, and this is the part where I'm not 100% sure, I know I ended up with going to an English teacher who I really, really liked, which sounds strange, right? A dyslexic liking an English teacher, but I think I've shared that story about him before. I ended up in his classroom. I don't know if I had English next or if I walked by his classroom and saw a gaggle of students standing in front of the television just fixated watching the screen. But I know I went to his room to watch the news that was on, and it talked about how, yes, this was a terrorist attack. The second plane had hit by that time. There was now the reports of the other two planes that were hijacked. We were kind of mesmerized. We were watching the television kind of in disbelief of what was going on. I know some people are getting emotional and whatnot. We still changed classes throughout the day. Some of the teachers really tried to continue on with lessons. Many of them, though, just let the students watch the news and digest what was happening and try and make sense of it. We all had questions, of course. Why is this happening? What exactly is happening? What does this mean? Some of the teachers, of course, tried to give us some sort of answer, but truthfully, they didn't even know what was going on. I do remember it was after the Pentagon got hit around lunchtime. The school had kind of started to come back to some sense of normalcy. At that point, though, just for lunch, a bunch of us got our names called over the announcements. to come to the principal's office or the administrative office. As a group of us, my name was called. I was one of them who was called. What it was is we were all people who had family members who may or may not have been affected by the Twin Tower hits or by the Pentagon being hit. So usually it was our parents had called, or the staff knew of an aunt or an uncle or a brother, sometimes even a parent for one or two of them, who may work in those vicinities or be in that vicinity. For me, it was my sister. She worked downtown DC. So my parents had called to check in on me and my brother. My brother was, I think he was in middle school, maybe he was in elementary school at that point. I must have been middle school. So I wanted to call to check in on us, see how we were doing. This was one of the rare occasions we were allowed to use the office phones to call our parents. This predates, kids having cell phones, easy access to cell phones by a lot. So we were able to call. I called, I believe, my mom first, and she was telling me, I'm sure your sister's fine, God will protect her, everything will be all right. I had a similar conversation with my dad. I then got to explain to them that where she worked was nowhere near the Pentagon. It was actually a different part of DC itself. She was not near the Pentagon complex. Now, what I kept to myself was that I knew my sister volunteered for a fire department that covered the Pentagon complex. They were called second due. So the primary rig goes out, and then this company goes and backs them up. So I knew she would be going to the Pentagon complex. She probably was in the process of getting out of work, trying to navigate the metro, because they shut that place down quick. They can shut down roads. I think all the roads in DC were shut down pretty quick. So I didn't have the heart to tell my parents that, even though she probably was not in the primary impact, she was definitely going to respond, probably help put out fires or do what she could. Just so you know, she did actually end up responding to the station, but the trucks were full. She was still kind of a rookie, so she was asked to stay at the station and run the auxiliary, help with food, meals, recovery, do some rehab on firefighters to come back, and when they switch in and out, take care of gear, hoses, stuff like that. So that's kind of my story, my aspect of it. I'll tell another story here the next time I post. Will probably be about the weeks and months after and years after. But what it really was that astonished me is after that event, it was amazing seeing people come together. It really was just after the terrorist attack was when our country was probably at its best. The sad part is 20 years later, we're now at our worst. So a lot has happened that got us here, but it's kind of sad to see where we've come. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Hope everyone's doing all right, and we'll talk to you later.